Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Dynamic Alignment Bodywork, Mother's Day edition. In this video, I wanted to, on behalf of Mother's Day, talk about the pelvis and pelvic positioning and how better pelvic positioning in movement, in walking and standing, actually more emphasis in a video like this on the basics of what we do, like standing, walking, sitting, and how that better alignment can hopefully serve you better in your life. So the pelvis is often regarded as the cornerstone in a lot of ways, structurally and functionally, to the human body. I mean, a lot of this is pretty obvious, right? But it's right where my legs come up, where my legs meet my torso. It's the seat of my guts, of my organs. There's a soft tissue floor called the pelvic floor, which many of you may be familiar with. A lot of times women, especially postpartum, do pelvic floor exercises to get that tone back, and it's sort of mirrored on the other side by our diaphragm here. So our breathing diaphragm and our pelvic floor diaphragm, and our guts in between. If we have a well-sitting pelvis, meaning it's sitting in space without a lot of effort, that can tend to serve everything above it and below it, and again the pelvis right in the middle. So whether or not you're experiencing hip pain per se, a good neutral pelvic position can serve a lot of us, if not all of us, most of the time. And so what I mean by a neutral pelvis is I just want to throw out a few thoughts for consideration and some things that I've learned over the years that have been helpful for me in my practice and treating people in this room and in my life in general. So, an ideal pelvic positioning is one that is, again, able to support my upper body from above and support my legs from below. You may have heard of people having a kind of a forward tilted pelvis. So I have my model here, right? You can tilt this way or tucked too far under. So in real life, that looks like my pelvis either being tipped forward, like if my butt was sticking out, if I was living my life like this. You can see how there's kind of a shortness through my lower back here. Or conversely, if I have my tail too tucked, which has a flat back here. Either one of those as opposed to neutral position for me. And the same thing can be said of left and right, though that's something we'll get into a little bit less today, though I'll probably mention something in seating. Anyway, so a little experiment you can do, and I would suggest you stand up to do this, to find your own functional neutral in your pelvic position, is to stand up and start to tip your pelvis forward, so sticking your butt out. You can do this by canting your whole body, obviously, but that's not the point. We want to isolate the iliac crest here, this rim of my hips. I'm going to tip it forward a little bit, and then I can come back to neutral. And then I can, conversely, I'm touching here because I can pull this up, that sort of feel of shortening my abs. I can tuck my tail. And notice, I can take a couple breaths in neutral, and then move more forward. And as I start to move forward, I'm going to pay attention to if it feels good, if my breathing gets any easier, if I notice a change in the rest of my back. And same thing when I go back to tuck. For most people, I'd say not a huge percentage, but maybe over 50%, they might find a little bit of relief and actually a better sort of feeling when we start to tuck back. And when I say start to, I mean just literally like you're moving maybe a millimeter or even not at all, but just finding if I have this position that's forward, my pelvic forward position, I'm really pulling upright here. I'm going to have a sense, if I really tune in, I'm not actually being very connected to the back of my body. So a lot of times this little pelvic tilt, or just starting to sink back, I'll also get a sense of kind of finding my weight, even my breathing, into the back of my ribs. This can definitely be more subtle stuff. It might not strike you as obvious, and it might, but I'd say, I would suggest feel for it and see what you feel. If it feels the same, or even, yeah, the same or better, like, okay, that could be something to play with. If it feels worse, obviously in either direction, like, I wouldn't suggest hanging out there. We can do the same thing sitting. Where when I go to have a seat, a lot of us will actually do a sort of tuck, not intentionally, but where we just sort of slump down, right? And then from this position, it takes so much effort for me to try and pull up my shoulders and my chest, and then, do my thing, typing. If you're sitting in a chair, which I'm guessing a lot of you are, you can also play with this position of lift yourself up and just slightly push the front of your sits bones. So I'm rotating my pelvis forward to be more, there's this whole rim, right? This is, you're looking forward into a pelvis. I want to be more on the front edge, the front points of these sits bones. And again, just see. Don't take my word for it or anyone else's word for it, but if this feels like, kind of a crampy, weird position, back off, right? But see if you can find a position that feels okay, maybe a little bit less than what you're used to and a little bit more. Again, for a lot of us, it'll be opening up. Almost hardly anyone will need to back off. Same thing sitting, I guess I'll just mention this left to right. If you have a wallet under either of your butt cheeks in your day-to-day life, take it out. There's free 2 cents that could save you a lot of trouble down the road. Keep it in the front pocket, get a purse or a man purse or whatever you've got to do to keep your wallet out from under that, to keep from hiking one hip up. Same thing when you get in a car, right? We open up the door. A lot of us will tend to plop on the seat, maybe not that dramatically. But when I'm down, there can be that little bit of tilt, so it can be worth it to take just a second in the car to kind of even out. It can be a nice ritual anyway, to sort of break our autopilot of doing stuff, but finding that just not necessarily perfect symmetry, but like a sense of evenness, where I'm not just here because I got in a car like this, right? And if I do this once or 20 times, it's fine. But if I get in my car like this 2,000 times and I drive to work the same way every day for 30 minutes, right? Or for a lot of us it's this. And I'm really exaggerating, but even those subtle variations of what is nice and neutral for me, anything outside of that, if I do it enough, will generally negatively affect my well-being, my structure, and everything happening within it. Same thing with standing. I'd suggest that whether you are finding that gentle tuck back or forwards, and sort of as an aside, neutral will always be where I'm at my tallest. So for me, you can notice that I start to tip forward. I actually don't know if that's showing up on camera or not, or if it's obvious or not, but I'll tend to get a little shorter. And here, tucking my tail, I'll just get a tiny bit shorter. I'm at the tallest in this joint when it's neutral. And the same is true of all my joints, which is why a lot of times people receive this kind of work or any work that they're lengthening through their structure and freeing up their joints and their soft tissue and bones. They'll tend to feel and actually be a little bit taller, even up to I don't know, half an inch, depending on how much there is to give. But once you get that sense of okay, I can play with tucking a little bit back. Again, it's not tucking here. There's a lot of talk in the fitness world for a lot of folks about tightening the core and sort of core stability, which can be great. It can be a great exercise for some people, but I don't buy it as a way of going through life. This can be very stable, and I definitely see people in this clinic room who have, generally speaking, a forward shift and a backwards tilt of their pelvis. So it's here, and what I want to do for these people is encourage them to drift a little bit back, where if I didn't change anything else, I would fall back. So I can actually just open up here a bit more. And my number one North Star, so much of what I talk about in these videos and in my practice and in my writing, is I go for a sense of ease, something that feels good, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, or say that it will always feel like this magic bullet, but I would have that very much be your North Star, as much as any sort of visual or other guidance. So there can be a sense when I move towards more neutral, so let's say I'm hanging out way forward. Again, I just start to kind of lean into being back. That sense of like, okay, maybe more connection through my body or just something that feels good. Great. Just hang out like that a little bit, 10 seconds. Take a few deep breaths into it, and that programming of this feels nice into your cells, into your neurology, into all of you will take hold when you're not thinking about it. At worst, this kind of like postural thinking can get very neurotic. You know, we're always like worried about our structure and if things are tilted right or even right. And again, that can be fine and that can be a really good exercise for some people for a short amount of time. But as soon as we don't need that anymore, that's to let it go, in my experience, and find a way of living, being, and again, this is our focus for today, a way of my pelvic position that feels natural, supportive, easy, and maybe even a little bit better than before you started. And if you've been doing the exercises, maybe than before this video. And do that as often as you want, a few times a day, and then when you're done, you can, let it go, because you'll stop thinking about it anyway. But trust that that will start to embed itself into your cellular memory as you move forward with the rest of your normal life that way. That's it. As always, email me or call me with any questions. Happy Mother's Day. See you soon.